All right, so welcome to the Goob Squad. This is our
Ooh.
podcast. This is going to be the first one of many. So today we're going to be talking about Last of Us Part Two. Spoilers ahead. If you haven't played the game, please play it. It's worth it. Um, and we're
It's
going to
not
be
polarizing at all.
and we're gonna be talking about like not only our opinions, our experiences, but also our take on like what we know in terms of the controversy of like the fandom is split and stuff like that. So we'll talk more on that, where we are on that fence. If we're on opposite sides, it's all good. We're gonna talk it through. And yeah, so you're gonna see, if you're just listening into the podcast, you're just gonna listen to us. And if you are watching a video, I don't know if I'll post this up at the same time, but I'll be doing some drawing. May not be Last of Us specific, so it's just kind of me doodling while we're chatting away and hanging out. And we might even talk about other stuff, so we'll see where it goes. Yeah, so let's go with intros. So I'm Sean Petit. My handle is iRagePhage. And yeah, gamer, and I like doing some artsy stuff. So yeah. All right, everybody else? Anybody else can jump in?
It's all
Okay, I'll
you,
jump in.
Carlos. Yeah.
Okay. Well, my name is Carlos Ponce. There's actually some Puerto Rican singer guy with the same name. I'm not him. Uh,
Is
but I am. I
Okay.
am
All right.
an amateur astronomer. I'm all into, sciencey stuff. So, yeah, I'll be bringing all of my completely, jack of all trades, non-knowledge about science into the conversation.
a
Sounds
lot of
good.
Oh,
astronomy in the game. Uh,
yeah, I'll have all the astronomy in The
that
Last of
one
Us.
time in the museum, you'll have a
And
lot to
and
say about that.
and yeah,
Oh,
and which
let's
also
not
makes
jump
sense
ahead,
to
but
your
yeah,
screen name, the antimatterburst, right? So you know,
exactly. I was just gonna
that's
say my name is Antimatterburst. Yeah.
yeah. So it goes with the theme. It makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You shouldn't change that name, by the way. I know you've talked about changing it in the past. I'll introduce myself in a second, but I know you've talked about like changing that name, but I think it's a unique name, and I
Yeah.
don't think you should change it.
In fact, actually,
Yeah.
I mean, now that we're talking about this too, I think you should secure every possible social media right now with
Yeah,
that
just
fucking
With
like
name.
antimatter, yeah.
Twitter,
Yeah,
Instagram,
yeah, just
anything
anything.
you're on or
Fuck it,
could
even
potentially
TikTok,
be
like
on, just take it.
whatever.
Even
Do it
TikTok.
all.
Oh my God. Yeah. Right.
Even if you're never gonna use the platform, just do it, because
Yeah,
That's true. I mean,
streamers and like fucking like anybody in that kind of entertainment biz, like they actually have to pay a lot of money to get that fucking name. Sometimes they have
oh
like
yeah.
oh,
some scoundrels
yeah.
out there just like grab the name, and then they realize that they can just like
Yeah.
I
totally
mean, do you know how fucking tough it was for Ninja to get that name after he
oh
blew
god,
Yeah. I
up?
can imagine.
imagine, right?
Yeah.
Because no one is named Ninja on the fucking
Yeah.
internet, right? Like,
For
I mean,
reals.
to be fair, antimatter is going to be hard to secure alone. The fact that I put burst at the end just kind of
yeah,
makes it like obscure enough that most people will be like, I don't know what the fuck that is. So
right.
it,
Right.
it, it makes sense. Yeah, it makes sense for me. It was actually easier for me to secure that on the
I'm
Switch
surprised that I
because I was
got
one of the
iRagePhage
early adopters.
on I got iRagePhage on a Twitter account. I made it separate, just just to see if I would should do that. But yeah, I had made it separate, and
Mhm.
then I made a separate one for Instagram. But I was surprised how easily I got iRagePhage. But I didn't know if I want to make my art stuff channel separate from my gaming channel. So I'm on the fence with it. But for now, I'm just kind of sticking with what I got in terms of just like
Mhm.
my name. So I know some people uh, don't want to have their real name out there, and I respect that.
Mhm.
And we'll so we won't name his name, but he goes by Remixed. But we don't play with him often enough. I don't think he's going to show up on any of our podcasts or anything like that. But I would love to get him on there. But he definitely,
He,
Yeah.
he, he can definitely
absolutely,
guest spot eventually. I'm
yeah,
sure
yeah.
he'll be on eventually.
We would definitely like to hear his opinion, especially like he has a pretty divisive kind of opinion on Final Fantasy, and also Zelda. Like he really,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
two. I want to see
I
you
would
two
like
go
to see.
at it.
I was
though.
just gonna say that. I would like to see you two, Carlos and Remix, just debate Zelda.
Yeah,
I would
debate
love
the
that.
fuck out of like
Yeah.
like why you didn't like this or why you did like this, and then like because he's very very different, like experiences
Yeah.
with the games, which is interesting. Anyway, so yeah, let's move on with the next intro.
The guy who's been
Okay,
talking.
before you introduce that, I just wanted to say I know what my handle is gonna be for
you.
TikTok. It's gonna be antimatter thought.
Oh god.
Okay.
You just had to stop this
I'm not gonna
just to
get in
go
trouble
to
for
that
that
cringe.
at all.
Oh my Jesus.
Okay, go for it. I'm sorry, just wanted to say that stupid joke.
Yeah, I'm Apollo Wilson. That's it. I mean, I like long walks with my dog and bags of donuts. What else can I say about me?
You
Yeah,
basically posted your Tinder profile.
there you go. Yeah, find me on Tinder at bucknaked1986. Yeah, but I'm Naughty Dog's my favorite studio. The Uncharted games, I've played them and replayed them more than any series ever. I replayed the first Last of Us like 9 full times, and so I definitely have a lot to say about the game. I can't wait to. So yeah, let's just jump into it now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, your your handle is also DeadlockChaos, so you'll see us play all together. And yeah,
I really like that one.
Yeah, we're the Goob squad. We're gonna goob it out, and you'll see us play some fun games here and there, and some also
And
frustrating
eventually, if you like and subscribe out there, you may eventually find the secret of why we're called the Goob Squad. It's a lot of lore surrounding that.
Yeah,
name.
that's some.
That's their story. A lot of people died for us to get that name. To be quite honest, so
Whole
like,
civilizations are
subscribe,
collapsed.
share, show it to friends to show the might and majesty of this platform that we're building here. All right, let's
join
get
us on
into it.
Patreon. Patreon,
Yeah.
Give us money.
We haven't even set it up yet, but do it.
Oh man. Oh, now you're gonna have one of those scalper type people that are just like they grab the fucking handle name and then like everything. Oh man, and then we're gonna have to pay him out just to get it.
What are the chances
Plot
that
twist:
what are
the scalper is actually me, but it's like I'm under another angle. Hey, well, how'd you get that new Porsche? I'll never tell.
So I can't tell you. I have an NDA on that.
Oh man, deep.
Uh,
All right, so Last of Us. Let's how should we start this out? All right, so maybe we'll just start off with like, okay, let's just go straight into
just overall impressions.
Yeah. Okay, what was
Did we
everybody's?
like it? Did we not like it?
Yeah, everybody's first impressions. I'll go with mine's. My first impression was it was definitely a great game. I enjoyed it. And I had a lot of like that emotional kind of whiplash between moment to moment. And even till now, like at the end of the game for me, my first impression is like, wow, what an ending. Like, holy crap. Like, I never had a game make me force me in a situation where I had to like, but I don't want no one to die, please. I want them
for
both
sure.
to live.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Can't they just be friends and walk away into the sunset?
Like, I'm like frustrated in my head in the sense that just say out loud why you guys did it, and just air it out right there, and then you both go. And if you guys haven't played, obviously, like the spoiler is like they meet up at the end and. That she's about to go and get her revenge, but then like the main character.
We'll get there. We'll get there. But you're right. Like we all at some point we all wanted to be like, come on, just sit down and talk it out, bitches.
Yeah. Talk it out, and I wanted them to fucking go.
You respect
and go. Them. Yeah, like or go together even, like become like allies even. Like I was almost feeling like they could have been like both going to the Firefly, right? and then maybe
Mm.
she would renew her purpose, like Ellie's purpose in life and stuff. But I, you know, at even then, even though I knew that's what I wanted them to do as like a kind of a
Mm.
fan, and you're really like devoted to it, I
There's
knew
no way
also
it's gonna
that
happen.
yeah, like you know that
It's just
just
not
gonna
the
be,
way that world works.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's a tragedy. Like that's the thing that I think that was really like my first impression is like super good with the story in terms of that it the writers knew that the fans ain't gonna like it, you're not gonna like it, but that was the reason why they did it. It's because
Yeah.
you didn't want any of those characters to die. You didn't want any of those characters to like be in that situation. And then on top of that, they wanted you to be angry with the what or expected to the character to be like, oh,
Right.
that's a villain, you know, like he's only a villain. But
Right.
But then you
Yeah.
journey through like that situation with Abby, and I like that. I was like, this is exactly kind of what we're dealing with in life right now, where everybody has a stake in what they're doing,
Yeah.
and everybody's emotional kind of experience is causing this divisiveness, and everybody kind of putting a fence up, and it makes sense. It's very realistic to the world that they're trying to portray. And it's not even like, come on, it is a genre of about zombies as a backdrop, but that's the thing, it's only the backdrop. It is solely about literally the title, The Last of Us. You know, everybody's just trying to survive and navigate through this like really even harsher environment.
Right.
And I so
man,
my
that
first
probably
impression, I
means
love
that-
it. So I mean,
Yeah.
I love it. It mechanically,
You know-
in terms of game stuff, like, you know, how the game was and like did it do anything different? Yeah, it really didn't push the mechanics anywhere else, really. Like, sure,
I like
there's
that, though.
small, yeah, it's small things that like made sense for Ellie, playing as Ellie. Like, you had specific things that you can do that took advantage of her, like her as a character, like her stature, and like she's not physically fit for everything. But then like, and then you play as Abby, which is like the exact opposite. They still played the same,
Right.
but there was definitely some obvious things that Abby could handle that Ellie wouldn't. So I like that it was super subtle, and they didn't go like, let's just you know, add a new mechanic in the game, and like, oh, you know, the crafting, like now it's even more complicated. Like, it's actually good that they didn't go that way, and at the same time, I understand that like they didn't up the level. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, there's small tweaks, right? And that's the thing that Naughty Dog is good at, is that like they know they have restraint, right? Like they could have easily gone with like, okay, we're bringing the crafting system back and the upgrade system back, but now it's like 20 different skill trees, and it's like super complicated, and I wouldn't have liked that. But the fact that they just kind of tweaked it, and they just made it slightly more in depth, where you can sort of you can make you can tailor your gameplay or your play style, like just with a little bit more nuance, but not like a ton, where you're like in the middle of a battle and it's just like, well, which skill do I pick? What am I gonna do? It's just like, no, it's like it's still super simple, and it feels like it fits the world really well.
Yeah, it's true. I like the fact that there's definitely more options as far as both skills and the amount of items that you can craft, but they're kept to like they're kept to a minimum of what you can actually manage, especially in the middle of a fight. Like, there's certain items that work for certain things, but there's not so many options that they overwhelm the player.
Right.
Yeah. You know, I'm afraid that this is going to be the type of conversation that where the three of us have, you know, have good glowing opinion about the game. But
I have,
you mean
I have some things
like
to say, but
we'll talk about that.
oh yeah, for sure.
but yeah.
So I'll go ahead and say that this game is shit, and it's the knack too.
Here, how about this? Let's write down. I'm gonna write it down, and I'm gonna put it on the screen as well to kind of to help us with this. So we'll go like bullet points. So like, what are the things that we should talk about? And we probably should have talked about this before we even started this, but hey, you know, whatever. Let's go with the flow.
It's fine. I mean, yeah.
So bullet point, first impressions, right? So what do we want to say about our
First-
first impressions? Like, The good, the bad, and the ugly. How about that? Like, let's keep it
Well,
simple.
I mean, yeah. Let's just go and let's just. You gave your overall impression, Sean.
Right.
We'll just
Yeah.
give ours, and then we'll just sort of get into the nitty gritty of what we liked, what we didn't like, all that
Yeah.
stuff. So like,
Yeah. We could go through, the pretty much the bullet points of like graphics, gameplay, story structure, and blah blah blah.
Okay. Yeah.
so like, yeah. So Carlos, how did you feel about the game overall?
I overall had a good impression about the game. Um, in terms of gameplay, I like the um, more aggressive style, and yet the fact that you can still, do the the stealth route all throughout. I
Yeah.
definitely I'll get to just how good it is at just making you feel and both empowered but also vulnerable when you're
Mm.
when you're killing enemies. I enjoy the story, but it is a story that I had to give a chance to, because I felt that there were moments in which it suffered of some like structural problems to it. Like
I
there were some
agree. Yeah.
pacing problems that
Mm, that's a
that
good
just
point.
bothered me. Like, yeah,
Yeah, I didn't even
but
mention that, but I actually agree with that too. The flaws were definitely a pacing issue. Like,
Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
that's
like what's a
kind
good
of like.
example of pacing issue? Does anyone have like a really good example of that?
I do. I mean, I have a
Go for it.
couple of examples. So like, let me just start with saying I love the game too. I don't think it's as
mhm.
good as the first one. But I hold the first one in high regard. But like, I love the story. I love the characters. I like that, like, little additions like the dodge and the jump, like making you more
Mhm.
nimble. Little quality of life things like that. Like the dodge alone, like makes melee combat really fun and like more
Yeah.
compelling to actually do. Like a lot of times, even if I had like guns and stuff and I was ready and I was perfectly stealth and stuff, like I would still go into melee combat just because it's like fun to like even like stalkers and stuff, like one of the new enemies like coming at you, you can like totally just like sort of finesse your way around them and in
Fucking
combat, and I
stalkers, I
like that a
hate them.
lot. Yeah, stalkers. Yeah, I mean they're not too
I mean,
bad,
I
but
hate them in a good way, in the sense that like
yeah,
they
yeah.
always give you a challenge because they were always running away from you. Like, come on, get over here.
Right, they would like run and then hide, and you'd be like, "Wait, where are you?" And then it'd be behind you, and it's just like, "Oh shit!" And
Mm,
there's like a bunch of them because they would like roam in packs. But
yeah.
yeah. So I mean, I love the story, and I think, I mean, seeing Ellie's character progression is like amazing, and honestly, it like there's a few scenes in that game, like early scenes as well,
Mm,
that broke me. Like I was just like the first scene where like Joel is or one of the first scenes where like Joel gets the guitar and he's like giving it to her, and
Mm,
he's playing the
mm-hmm.
song about, and he's sort of saying the song is basically telling him why he loves her, and like saying
mm,
like all these missing pieces that I had, I don't need them anymore, like all the things that like I did and the walls that I put up, I don't need them anymore because I have you. And
mm.
it's that broke me honestly. And there's a few things like that, like the museum scene we were talking about
Oh
before. That's
yeah,
like probably my
So good.
favorite scene in the whole game.
Yeah.
yeah,
Because it
that was
gets back to
fantastic.
classic Joel and Ellie and their dynamic. Ellie being much younger, like she was in the first one, and just doing goofy things like putting the hat on the dinosaur and like all these things. And it's
Yeah.
I mean, my favorite moment in the whole game is where they're in the like the astronaut like pod, and like she has the helmet on, and he gives her the cassette of like the launch, and she's imagining like herself being an astronaut, which is like something that's a carryover from the first game where she was like, where he was asking her like, what would you love to do if the world wasn't the way it was, and she was like, I want to be an astronaut. Like I just want to see what's up there. That wouldn't it be cool? And like they run with that in that scene, and that definitely had me tearing up for sure. But like, and then to get to Abby, like, that's definitely. I mean, that's a character that you inherently start off disliking
Mm.
because
It's
of
hard
because
to get to sympathize with her. Yeah.
yeah, definitely at first, because like again, this is a spoiler-filled discussion. So she kills Joel, right? Like, which is, and she kills him in the first few hours, and it's brutal, and you don't know.
I know.
I I
As if there
suspected.
wasn't a worse, as if there wasn't enough a reason to hate golf.
Yeah, exactly. And I suspected that Joel was gonna die, and I suspected why. Like even before they got to Joel, Abby and her group got to him. Like I suspected that they were the remnants of the Fireflies. I just had a hunch, but like it. Yeah, I mean that alone, and then the way she sort of comes off, like her cold, brutish demeanor, like it makes her sort of like inherently dislikable at first, but then the way the game is structured, and this does tie into the pacing issues that I have. The way it's structured, where it's like, okay, you go day 1, day 2, day 3, Ellie, and then you get to a focal point, and then switch, and it goes back to day 1, and you go through day 1, day 2, day 3 as Abby from a different perspective.
Right.
And I on that journey with Abby, you get to really know her, and she's a very she like Ellie. It's a very tragic character, and it does play into the whole theme and the whole point of the game, which is that everything that we do, especially in this world, has consequences, and everything, like, because at the end of the last game, Joel goes in, he kills a bunch of fireflies. He kills the surgeon who ends up being Abby's father, and he kills the surgeon who is the only surgeon that they know of in the world who can actually cure the virus if they have the cure, which is Ellie. And so like that is what sets off the entire chain of events, and it's really good, but the pacing is a little off.
It's definitely detrimental. So, in my experience, when it came to that, I take my time with games, and especially with a game like The Last of Us, that it asks you to look at environments and to scour for items. Like I like that, like almost stand-like quality of it. Just being able to just kind of lose yourself in the relics of of a lost world, and just looking around, piecing things together. I like those small sets of exploration. And so I pretty much took my time. You get all the way to the pretty much crescendo of the very first crescendo of the story with Ellie, to the point where you finally meet Abby for the first time, and
Right.
it just reaches this climax that just gets dropped down all the way to the end, because you all the way to the bottom all over again, because you start off with Abby from the beginning. Like
Right.
like I was actually caught off guard, because I thought, oh, okay, maybe this is just going to be a quick flashback to Abby, and then
100%.
I realized, and then I
That's
realized,
exactly
oh
what I
shit,
thought too.
Yeah.
this is like, oh, Seattle's first. Like, god damn it, I'm gonna play a whole nother game, with Abby, and
That for sure was agonizing, just because you wanted that, like, you wanted to get to that story, and then like it's kind of this carrot on a stick situation.
Well, I mean, I feel like it's a double-edged sword, because I see the benefits, I see the pros and cons of it in that. Like I mean, with Neil Druckmann, and then I think he also had another writer who worked on it with him. I can't remember her name, but she worked on Westworld. And they were the two writers of the game. And Neil Druckmann, he knows how to tell a good story. But like I assume they must have hopefully experimented with alternating between playing as Ellie and Abby. Like instead of like to maybe avoid that pacing issue, like going,
I can totally see that.
Like day
that's
one,
exactly what I'm
half
thinking.
of it's Ellie, and then day 1 half of it's Abby, and then you switch Ellie, Abby, and then you reach that crescendo. I imagine they experimented with that and it didn't work. I mean, I don't know, but
you know what? I second you. That's exactly what my vision was. That perhaps it would have been better if like half of it on one day would have been half Ellie, half Abby.
Yeah. I mean, I think that definitely would have helped the pacing a lot. I don't know though. I mean, like, I don't know, and I kind of do want to replay the game, like, and just do like chapter select, and like, okay, play it as day 1 Ellie, and then like jump out of the game and then go in as day 1 Abby, and like see if that helps the pacing. But Yeah, I mean, I'm with you, Carlos, and Sean. You echoed the sentiment of it, where it's just like, okay, we reached that focal point where Abby finally confronts Ellie, and in the theater, and it's like, okay, it's this huge thing, and then you stop, and then you go all the way back to day one as Abby, and you got to go all the way through. Where I was like, okay, certainly it'll be a short part. Like we'll definitely get back to that soon. And then like
exactly.
And it's like, 15 hours later, then we finally see the outcome of that situation. But I mean, I guess the flip side of it is that I get why. I mean, I get why they did it, because obviously you want to. By the time you reach that focal point, you don't want it to just be all Ellie's perspective. Like you want to know why you should care about Abby. You want to know what all the things that she's.
You want to walk in her shoes for a while, yeah.
Right.
You want to walk in her shoes for a while.
Right, and right before that scene, we saw Ellie kill everybody that Abby cares about. Right, like we saw in the aquarium, and getting then you rewind it back and you play as Abby for those 3 days, and you get to see why those characters, specifically Owen, why they mean so much to Abby, and why. Basically, Ellie's actions caused Abby to go on her own revenge quest for Ellie, right? Where Ellie was going for a revenge quest for Joel, and like by the time you reach that point, which is like 25 hours in the game or so, and you reach the point where you've seen Abby's perspective and Ellie's, and then you get back to that point where they finally confront themselves, then it's like, oh. I totally understand why Abby would want to kill Ellie, and I totally sympathize and empathize with her as much as I do with Ellie.
Right.
But then the second biggest pacing issue I have is the section after that, where you go to Santa Barbara, because that like they introduce a whole new group, which is fine. Obviously, there are other fucking factions out there. But the Rattlers were so stupid and one note, and like it was just like, oh, here's another group. They enslave people. They look like bikers, I guess. That's all we know about them. And then the game.
Yeah, they're pretty much like They're the second most one-dimensional creatures in that game, other than infected, right?
Yeah, for sure.
For sure. They didn't do much at all.
I mean, they were really only a plot device to show why Ellie might not, in my opinion, why she didn't end up killing Abby at the end.
Yeah.
Like, because like at that point, like for me, when Ellie goes through the Rattler compound, she kills all of them, and she gets to Abby and Lev, and they're on the pillars. They've been strung up for presumably days, left out there to die. She has her hair cut, and she's so
consumed.
Yeah,
Abby is like that woman is built like a fucking truck, and then you just see her and just
she's a fucking beast.
Literal ox.
Yeah,
like they literally say that, and that was on purpose too, because it's like you could tell like they wanted to show that Ellie had an opportunity to right all the supposed wrongs, and it in the end it just wasn't worth it. I mean, that's what they're trying to say here, is like none of this was worth it, and it really was more of her own struggle of trying to find forgiveness for Joel, and that Abby had taken that away for her, and she knew that this vengeance would consume her in the same way that Abby was getting consumed by vengeance and losing people that are closer to her too. But that's the funny thing, it's like that's what the story's telling you, but Ellie doesn't know Abby's situation, and Abby doesn't know Ellie's like relationship and how deep it was. But as you can tell, everybody has their story, and I'm assuming they purposely didn't want them to kind of hash it out, or else that would be too much of a kind of a glowing Disney ending.
Why would they?
Yeah, I know,
like, in
right?
reality, why would
in
they?
reality, why
They're
would they?
still
Exactly.
enemies.
They're still enemies. Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, it's only because we've seen their journeys that we can understand, and we want them to be friends, even though we know that won't happen. But the whole
we
thing
have that
with
degree of separation.
Yeah, but the whole thing with the Rattlers and it being a plot device, like Ellie helps helps her off of the pillar, and then they get to the beach and they have the fight. And the reason, in my mind, the reason why Ellie doesn't kill her isn't so much as because like it's not worth it. For me, it was like, and again, this ties in the uselessness of the or not so much the uselessness, but just the straight plot device that the Rattlers were. Is that like she had been strong? They had said like when Ellie releases the guy who tells her where Abby is on the beach, like they say that like she's been enslaved by these guys for months. Like the last time we see Abby and Lev and they're like in Santa Barbara and they're exploring the houses and then they get captured, that's like months between the time that we see her and then the last time we see her. And like it would have been nice. I don't know that was necessary to do except for it to be a plot device for when they get in the fight and Ellie's strangling her and she has the upper hand and she has her underwater and she's about to kill her and Joel's face flashes in her mind and she stops. The whole thing for me was like, I think at that point Ellie was just like, it's enough. Like we've both at this point, both me and her have had enough. Like she's been tortured enough. Like all the things that she's been through with her father dying and all this stuff. Like and then with her being strung up there and she's like just totally, she's half dead and she just wants to leave and she's like, you know, caring for this kid who Ellie doesn't know. I think at that point Ellie's just like, it's enough. Like this has to end. Like it needs to end for both of us. And she lets them go. She's not happy about it, but she's like, this has consumed my entire life. Like she lost Dina and the kid, right? The baby that they had a whole farm and they had like a seemingly happy ending, even though, you know, Ellie was still deeply traumatized by Joel's death. Like they had an ending there. They had a happy ending, but Joel's death continued to be a splinter in her mind that she just couldn't let go. Right? Like that was every fiber of her being was telling her, I shouldn't go after her. Like Abby, I shouldn't keep going after her. Like it should be done, but it couldn't be done until she got to that point where she saw Abby pretty much destroyed already and forced her to fight. Right? Like she forced her to fight because like Abby didn't want to. Right? She was like, I just want to leave. That's it. And Ellie's like, no, like we're fucking fighting. We have to finish this, like for the closure. Like I need closure on this, but yeah, it's.
I think that at some point she kind of realizes that this is not going to bring her closure. Like this is not going to bring her, you know, the closure that she wanted to have with Joel this whole time. Because I think that was one of her most driving motivations right there. The fact that, as we see in the flashback to the night before, you know, it all happens, she, you know, comes up to Joel and she, you know, she tells him, look, I don't know how to forgive you, but I want to try. Right. And like that moment is where like the moment where they both can
of the situation that she wants that like she knows that she can't forgive like what Joel did, but she also can't forgive Abby at all either. And then in some ways but like they're she's like now has to like bear this pain as penance for trying their best to live life to forgive both Joel what he did and including sadly say to some degree is what Abby did too,
but also forgiving herself, right? Like because she when she kills Mel
people too.
Well, specifically when she kills Mel and Owen, and then before Owen dies, he's like, she's pregnant, and Ellie's like, oh fuck, what did I just do? And that's like sort of the point where she's like, okay, maybe this has gone too far. But then she has to keep going. But it's, I mean, that
was like the last death right before meeting up with Abby.
Yeah. Well, second to last after. Well, I mean, like Jesse gets killed by Abby, like reactionary, like as a reaction when he.
That's mean.
Out of the
Ellie's last kill was that. That's what I meant.
Sure, yeah.
That for her in her perspective, it's like that's the straw that broke the camel's back in a sense that like I really got to stop. Like this is not gonna. Like, what am I doing? You know, I'm there's nothing gaining from this. The only thing that she's getting from it is more PTSD, more fucking
God,
stress from this, you know.
how
Um,
heartbreaking was that to see her in the farm, have her,
Yeah.
kind of happy ending, and just get it, constantly interrupted by, by that PTSD.
right.
Yeah. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was. It
Yeah.
was. It was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And it matched up too with like when she had those flashbacks with when she was fighting Abby, and having the flashbacks
Yeah.
with Joel, and then we're finally
Yeah.
seeing that kind of reveal of like, what were they were trying to patch up, and then
Yeah.
it's almost like Abby took
You
that
know
away, but then at the same time, it's
that.
like it's also like a bigger story about everybody's trying to fight to get their second chance, including Abby.
Mm,
She's trying to
Yeah.
save these Seraphites, these scars, from their communist kind of like cultist, culture, and
mm.
that she herself has this just bad ledger of shit that she's done prior to, and she's trying to wash it away with whatever possible good she can do, and she's trying to fight it. She's trying to fight
Right.
that kind of nature. I mean, it's even more reflective of like that they're called wolves. She's part of a wolf pack, and she's like the alpha of it. She's like, they even mention about like, her that fucking conversation with Mel was so good. Right before she just kind of like right before she had to go to the island to chase after Lev, was like
Mm.
she just fucking lays it out on her. It's like, I know who you fucking are. Like you're
Right.
you're what was his name? Isaac's top killer, right? Suddenly gets
Right.
a moment of like, you're a good person all of a sudden. Like that
Mhm.
like that's supposed to undo everything. And that's the story here. It's like all these like situations of like Joel literally saying, I would always if I got another chance to make that choice, I would always do it again, because it's the second chance I have at, having a daughter, like having the daughter, right? Having a
Right.
daughter and living that life, being a father, and he will always do that. Like he will always make that choice regardless of what it was, because it was his second chance, and he said that himself. And it's so reflective of like, the person that killed him also, she made the bad choice, and now she's living the rest of her life trying to make a second chance, like trying to take that second chance and
I feel,
undo the bad shit. And
yeah, I feel like it's a.
Ellie
Mhm.
is made the choice not to kill Abby in the greater story. Not that she knew any of these things, not that she was thinking it necessarily, but maybe to some degree she's like, you know what? I'm not going to do this because I don't want to put myself in a situation where I have to live my life trying to chase after a second chance. Maybe. And that's an interpretation of, blah, blah, blah. But anyways,
But
you're saying,
but that's the interesting thing about that. Just quickly, is that like Abby. Again, we're not entirely sure because we don't know exactly what she was thinking in the moment. But that conclusion that Ellie reaches at the end of the game, like right to not kill Abby for that reason, Abby reached that conclusion before when she didn't
Yeah.
kill Ellie. When she didn't kill Ellie, or when she didn't kill Dina and then Ellie in the theater, because at that
Yeah.
point, Abby totally outmatched Ellie. Like she
She
had
had
fucking
every
could have killed
opportunity.
both of them.
Yeah.
Like the only reason that like they were even like even footed in the last fight is because Abby had been like sitting up there in the fucking sun for days. Like Abby is a total, like they're both forces of nature, but Abby is even more capable than Ellie in a lot of ways.
Oh, she said. I mean, they're both killing machines, but like Abby has dedicated her whole life. Like she has completely transformed her physique into a fucking killing machine.
Well,
Right.
not just the physical, but
Um,
like, yeah, she definitely like she had like years to harbor all this hate, and she just like all the training that
Yeah.
she went through too with the wolves. Like even in those flashbacks with her, you could tell that she was just like insanely focused at being like a better like survivor. She's just constantly talking about, oh, we're gonna miss training, blah blah blah, and she's like super diligent in it, but her love interest Owen is always trying to bring back that humanity in her, like remember
Yeah.
like why we were doing this. Like Fireflies had a mission statement, right? Like a Fireflies wanted to save the world, but then like because that got taken away from them, for her, her mission statement is now like, let's fucking, like, get the revenge and that, get the resources needed to find the person and get quote unquote justice, right? So it's
Right,
like,
and
yeah,
that's the parallel to Ellie's story, right? Is that it's a story built on hate. Is
mhm,
that it's like, okay, you killed the one person that like meant more than anything to me, which is both of their respective father figures. That right, and like, okay, like so that's why Abby has like been fueled for years to go after Joel, the same way Ellie is fueled to go after Abby, and it's yeah, it's super interesting, and the fact that again, like the characters in this game are amazing, like the side
Yeah.
characters too, like they're all great. Whether it's like with Owen, like talking since we were talking about him, like he started off as a character where you see him in the flashbacks, and he's just the sort of your sort of typical like military grunt guy, and he's dumb and he's like making stupid jokes, but she's laughing. And I was at first I was like, okay, whatever. Like I'm interested in Abby's story, so I'll deal with this guy. But then there comes a turning point where he's like he breaks because of
yeah,
something that happened out on patrol when he was
Mhm.
talking to
yeah, that's
when
a
he was
good
about to
point.
kill the Seraphite, and like he was this old guy, and he was talking about how he's like, I saw it in his eyes. He could have gone for the gun, but he didn't, and he looked at me, and he was just ready.
Yeah,
Like
he was ready. He was
he was
accepting.
ready to go. He was ready to be done with this world, and like
Right.
and that's the point where Owen's character totally turns, and he becomes so much more interesting, where he becomes a lot more humble and a lot more quiet and a lot more just like, I just want to live, like I
Right.
just want to have a good life, and and it's really really interesting, and it makes it again even more tragic, because at that point in the story we already know how he dies.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and it's more reflective. It even really it builds that kind of this thesis statement that they're trying to say is that these people are like being burnt out from the world. Like the world is churning them out and just like spitting them out, and
Yeah.
they're just a meat grinder. And he understood that when he saw that old man, and it's almost like the same kind of like thing you could think about when Ellie looked at fucking was choking Abby, and it's like, you know, like, what am I doing? It's like, what am I doing? This person's burnt out from this world as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is not, they're all kind of like victims of this world. And
Yeah.
I feel like that, like, it really nailed the story in terms of that. So it sounds like we're pretty like close in terms of like what Carlos was saying earlier, that we're pretty agreeable right now. So
Mhm.
let's talk about some of the more divisive, I guess, opinions out there. Like for instance, I mean, maybe we start from the beginning. Like there's a lot of people don't like the beginning. The story leaked out. Clearly, a character that everybody loves dies. Joel
Right.
dies in the beginning, and people don't like that. And then even more
Yeah,
so,
so
that people don't like to have to like be forced to, which might be a pacing issue, to play Abby. Right? You're
as Abby,
spending all this
right?
time now, like half the game, the other half of the game with her, and
Yeah.
like
So
what is your thoughts on that? Or maybe how about this? This one was an
I mean,
interesting point.
I was gonna ask, like, how do you? I mean, do you guys feel that um, Joel dies at just the appropriate time in the story? Do you think that it was done appropriately?
Ah,
Um,
okay, yeah, that's a good question.
what? Yeah.
I mean, we were talking with your brother Carlos the other day a little bit about it. He's like not as far in the game, so we were like leaving it as spoiler free as possible. But we were talking about that
Mm-hmm.
moment with Joel when he dies, and like
Mm-hmm.
I had kind of I was lucky enough, and I did try very hard to avoid all spoilers, and luckily I actually did.
Me too.
Until I played the game, and I'm so glad. But like it's. I kind of figured that just based on the one or two trailers that I had seen, that it was gonna be Joel who died. I thought it would be in the beginning of the game, like the way like Joel would die in like the first 20 minutes, the way that Sarah had died in the first one, and that would be the fuel for Ellie, the same way that was the fuel for Joel. Yeah, obviously it's a little bit later, but it's still close to the beginning of the game. But I didn't. But yeah, I mean it isn't the whole. I don't. You know, people have a lot of different opinions about why they didn't want Joel to die and all this, but it.
So okay, let's stay on that. Like, should he have died? You know, first
I don't
of all,
think it's even a question of should he have. Like anything in this, the rule of this world that they've established, the rules is that anyone can die. Like that's just the way it works because everyone's surviving, and like I think it's.
You know, I'm trying to understand. Just like because I'm with you. Like we know that for as much as we love Joel and as much as we sympathize with him, what he did. I mean, he's been a terrible guy, you know, for 20 plus years. But specifically, the moment that he did what he did at the St. Mary's Hospital, like that was one of the most monstrous things, you know, anybody could do. Like he went out there and like, I mean, he pretty much killed a whole ward full of people and like, you know, doomed the entire world to, you know, to pretty much the entire humanity to die off.
So are you saying like the question is that he should have died because of the monstrous act? Like you're saying that it was supposed to happen, like you expected to happen, like, or you said yes, that was the right thing, or what's the answer here, or what's the question?
I think that you know, and again, just following on the one last thing that I think that it's really like important for you know for Ellis is the fact that he took that you know that choice away from her. Like he took away you know her own choice of like you know what to do with her own body.
Right. I mean that's the thing. That's why I actually like that he died is because it plays on the entire theme that the whole game revolves around. Is that and we were talking about it before with one of the last scenes where like that sort of flashes. It's a flashback to the night before that everything happened, where Ellie's explaining to her why she's angry and like because when he killed the fireflies and specifically that the surgeon who's Abby's father, he took away her purpose. Like that was her purpose. Like it was she was the one person that they know of that was immune and that could have saved the world. And he just took and so it's basically her now sort of very difficultly having to navigate life without a purpose and sort of wandering aimlessly. And it's and that's the thing is that when Joel dies, when Abby kills her, it's because of what he did in that last moment of the first one. And that's what the whole game revolves around. It's that last moment of what he did, obviously because of how it trickles down and how Abby goes after him. And why Ellie, you know, why Joel and Ellie had the whole falling out, but it also is the fact. It's also the idea that everything, like it's that lie that he tells Ellie in the last scene of the game, of the first game, and that like he doesn't tell her, right? Like he's like, oh well, she doesn't know any of that because in the first game. Basically, what happens is they get to Salt Lake City, where the St. Mary's Hospital is. They fight a whole like hell tunnel of fucking infected. She gets knocked unconscious, and then during that whole thing, she's out. She didn't know. Yeah. She didn't see Marlene again. She didn't know about that. She didn't know any of that. And she wakes up after they're already driving back, and he tells her, "Oh, like, oh yeah, like you're not like there's plenty of other people like you. It probably wouldn't have worked anyway. Like, and that's the whole thing is that the entire game and even the flashbacks in the years we see Ellie grow up and like how they sort of become further and further apart. It's because of that lie. It's a festering wound that totally fucks up their relationship and that causes Abby to come after Joel in the first place. Like it's all because of that moment.
So you're saying,
I really love.
You're saying it's like necessary. It was necessary for that to happen, and like it was an inevitability.
Based on the story they were trying to tell, and based on the theme that they were trying to convey of that festering wound of a lie, and how it trickled out to all the characters, I think it was I think it was totally necessary. And honestly, if it had been Dina who had died, like a lot of people thought, I think that wouldn't have been enough to fuel Ellie to how far she goes into the game to kill Abby.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously,
really...
she loves Dina, but like Joel was the first person who like stuck around in her life, right? Like not like either intentionally or not intentionally. Like right, like Marlene in the first game gives her away to Joel and Tess so that they can smuggle her out of the city, and then Riley, who is her best friend and her love interest in the DLC Left Behind, like she dies when they both get bitten, and that's the moment that she realizes she's immune. But then, but in between Left Behind DLC and the first game, that's when Riley dies, and then Ellie realizes that so basically she's been left by everyone in her life up until Joel, and so it's not just a father-daughter thing, it's more like, this is the one person that's been a constant in my life, and you took him away from me.
Yeah.
Like, that's... So, yeah.
Yeah.
Poor Joel, right? Like, he's been marked by this, like, ironic tragedies, like, throughout his entire, existence. Like, the very monstrous act that he does to save Ellie's life is the very thing that, dooms his relationship with her. And
right, and
it's like, at the same time, like, how could anybody be surprised about that, right? Like,
well,
that
that's the
had
thing,
to
right?
be addressed in this fucking game. Like, if
That's
they
the
never
thing, is
did,
that-
then I would be frustrated.
Well,
and I love the fact that also, like, his very last act of kindness of saving Abby is exactly what dooms him to die.
Right, and that's the thing, is that at that point in the story, right before when she kills him, he's trying to be a stand-up guy, trying to atone. It's been years since he told Ellie that lie in the end of the first game, and he's everybody in the community sort of looks up to him. Jesse tells Ellie later, like, I would have come if you had asked me. Like, I looked up to Joel, like all these things, but it's not enough because of consequences. Because Joel spent 20 years doing a lot of fucked up shit to survive, and he crossed a lot of people. And it's just the butterfly effect of, like, this one person that you killed at that moment, that one surgeon, there's no way you could have known that he was the father of somebody. There's no way you could have known that she would have built herself up to fucking come, like, just for you. Like, that she was literally focusing her entire life on killing you. There's no way you could have known. But that could have literally been anyone you wronged over the last 2 decades.
Mm-hmm.
That could.
You really
didn't
can't deny
necessarily
that
have
he
to be
got his
Abby.
comeuppance.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and that's the thing, right? People say, is he a hero? Is he a villain? He's not. He's a survivor.
Right.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, that's it.
So there's
the thing about pretty much. Go ahead.
There's this one like position that somebody has, which is like, I don't agree with, but I'll just say it here, that somebody had a position saying that the fact that he admitted his name and his brother like also admitted their names is that it was fundamentally a character flaw that contradicts the way they were before, or the way they are. Like, they wouldn't just easily say, "Oh, but yeah, my name's Joel," but knowing the fact that you've fucked over that many people.
I mean, it's not like there's the internet.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
They could, like, look them up. Like, there's no way that they could have fucking known that.
There was no way they could have known.
Right.
That's the thing. So it's like he's saying, like, there's just that one thing, and then, like, the fact that they went to rescue this perfect stranger, that amongst all the fucked up things, they just happen to, like, do the right thing to the wrong person. And like, is there anything like credence to, like, knowing what you've played in the first one versus, like, these small things? Do you think they could have done it better, where instead of him rescuing her and then them just kind of lounging around admitting who they were, and then, like, eventually kind of powwowing with complete strangers, does that seem like it's like, that's kind of convenient? Like, it's a convenient character flaw, I would say. Not that it's a bad thing, but it could be something that to note of like what could be like maybe there was a better way to do this plot, right? To move the plot forward.
Mm.
But what do you guys think? Do you think it was too convenient for that situation to happen, or was it just necessary to have it like that for XYZ reasons?
Uh, I I don't. Yeah, I don't agree with that opinion either. Simply because, like in the first game, when you see like Joel and he's sort of callous and he doesn't, when he meets like Henry and Sam, the brother and the two brothers in the first one, and he's like his first instinct is try to kill them. That's because like they're in a totally different situation. And even in the first game, we see how Tommy is, and we see that he's not the same as Joel. And so, but again, going back to what I was saying before about how at the point that Joel dies, he's trying to be a better person. Like he is one of the like main sort of guys who goes out on these runs and clears the infected and brings in survivors, and it sets that up when like Ellie and Dina are like going through the logbook and they're talking about it, and you see how they've been doing this for years. How they've been going out, they've been clearing stuff, they've been bringing people back. They've been like, okay, we're going to stop our patrol because we found people who are in need of medical attention. We're going to bring them back. Like, the story set it up. So I don't agree that, like, they wouldn't have done it because they specifically showed that they would and have done it many times.
Right.
For the
I definitely have to agree with you because
settlement.
Yeah, because they've been doing it for years. They've been finding survivors, bringing them in, strengthening the community by strengthening the numbers too.
Right.
I'll go ahead and take devil's advocate here because I agree with you guys that it's a ridiculous, it's just silly point to take. But I guess that this is a character that was the main character in the last game, somebody that you've been kicking ass, and been in a tragic situation for so long. I guess you could still argue that despite the fact that you want to bring in survivors, he could still be suspicious of malactors. So
sure.
He could have still killed a couple of those guys.
But it was a survival situation, right? Like it's not like it's not like they met Abby out there and they were just walking and talking. Like she was getting attacked and they had to act fast, and their first instinct is like, okay, let's save this girl. We'll find out about what she's really about later, but right now, let's save her. But the thing is that once they get back to like the other ex-Fireflies that are Abby's people, there's no time to be like, wait, who are you? What are all your backstories? Abby, are you a good person? It's just like it kicks off immediately. Like, oh, who are you guys? Oh, Joel Miller and Tommy Miller. Oh, it sounds like you've heard of me. Oh, we have. And then she shoots him in the leg and starts torturing him. Like, it's immediate. There's no time to ask the background information.
Then the real question is, like, we got that background information that they've been saving people, right? But then why isn't that we never got a background information or a scenario in which they brought someone to their safe haven and they had to banish them for whatever reason? Like, we haven't gotten any particular story on that, which is unfortunate because they would have been interesting. Because I find that Tommy and Joel are pretty much like, they're pretty smart people. They're tactically smart. They're fucking like madmen when it comes to being on the other end of the gun. If you give that example of like
I love the fact that in the first game he's like, he ain't even hurt. He's about to run him over because they've done the same thing themselves.
So
they know how the game works.
So they understand how to survive, and they have even when they represent, like, good example of this, of them how smart they are is the whole, like, me and Brenda love this part. It's just like how they interrogate people. Like, that's fucking genius, and it's like
which they showed in the first game as well, by the way.
Right. So that being said, like, wouldn't it be at all like, in somewhere disbelief, like wouldn't they just still like have some sort of system in way that can verify people? Like, you can't just like, I can risk you and just bring you into our place, and what if they're like associated with another group that wants to raid their stuff and steal their stuff and attack them? But I'm guessing now that's only on the devil advocate side. My, of course, counter to that is that we just haven't got a story that way. You know, like there was no
Yeah.
purpose to make. That means we would have to extend the story further to further explain how they dealt with
Right.
it, just to justify his eventual more.
I mean, you
guess,
could have had
cleaner death.
you could have had a few notes or something like detailing the
Right,
story
sure.
like that, but it's not really necessary.
Exactly.
Like, and there's so
Yeah.
many fucking notes.
There's
and
so much
there's
story
many-
going on.
Like,
we need
honestly,
to add more.
I like
Yeah.
all the notes and stuff, but like in terms of like the other collectibles, and this is just a small gripe of mine. It's not really. I don't hold the game against like. I don't hold this against the game at all. But there's too many collectibles in the game. Like I didn't need to fucking collect 50. And again, this is just me. But I didn't need to collect 50 fucking coins with Abby of all 50 fucking states. Like in all.
Wait, there's actually 50 coins?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fuck!
Here's the thing.
I'm never gonna find them all. I hate those fucking things.
Do you understand? Okay, so it took me 31 and a half hours to beat the game because I was looking for collectibles. And I don't usually look for collectibles in my first run of a game, especially in a game that I'm this excited about. I usually go through it and like find collectibles as I go, like just past them. But like this game, and this is another flaw another sort of problem I have with the game, is that
There's too much scavenging.
it's not. I mean, there is, but that was in the first game. It's more like, for one, the game is too long. I do think the game is too long, but it's also
I felt
a
that
little.
fatigue.
It's a little too open. Now they have they have the one section that's again it's a la Lost Legacy and Uncharted 4 that they did before, like in the downtown Seattle, where she's exploring it with Dina. And where it's like it's a big explorable area, and that's the only one that's the only area that's like that, where it's that big and it's just meant specifically for exploration and it's optional, and that's fine. I don't mind that. But a lot of the areas, it almost seemed like it's cool that you can come from different directions with the stealth and stuff, and they made the open areas like for that. But like a lot of the areas that weren't in combat were still really open, and I was like. I'm pretty sure they did this just to build it around the insane number of collectibles there are. Like because I've played enough games and looked for enough collectibles where I'm like I can almost feel when it like levels are designed specifically.
Oh yeah, you know what?
Around that.
You bring up a good point too. We should have mentioned this too. Apollo is our resident platinum hunter. You know, so if you don't know about that, so. In PlayStation, you have trophies, and if you collect all of them, you get platinum the game. So amongst all of us, he is the go-to when it comes to like I'm gonna platinum like this is a great game. I'm gonna platinum this. You know,
right? And
even if it's not an amazing game, he'll still like try and like platinum. So if anybody's listening.
I mean, I am a trophy hunter. I have been for a while. I don't. With most games, I actually don't go for the platinums, but definitely with games. I never go into a game where I'm like, oh, okay, I'm just playing the game just to get the trophies. I know a lot of people do. Right. That's totally fine. But I always play I only play games, and I only specifically go after trophies in games that I really like. So going into this, I was like, and especially because I've platinumed every other Naughty Dog game since the first Uncharted, I was like, I'm probably gonna platinum this game. But like definitely going through and getting the collectibles, I'm just like, for one thing, it's annoying as a trophy hunter. But more than that, it's just like there's too many collectibles. And a lot of times
did we really have? I know, right? Like, did we really have to like collect like 50 million Pokemon cards?
Yeah, I mean exactly. Like those cards are interesting with the superheroes and stuff, but it's just like there's so many. I finished again. It took me probably 5 or 6 hours longer to beat the game. Specifically because the game had almost trained me to look for collectibles based on the way the levels are designed and stuff, even though I don't usually do that on my first run. And so by the end of it, I'm like, certainly I looked at the number of collectibles I had like 197, and I'm like, that's so many collectibles. But certainly when I'm doing the cleanup for the trophy, I must have only missed 10 or 15. There's no way I could have missed any more than that, the way I scoured every surface. And I spent like 8.5 hours yesterday getting like 100 more collectibles.
Oh my god.
And I'm like, this is too much. Like if
Yeah.
just like I'm not gonna stick with this point for too much longer, but again, this really has no bearing on my feeling for the game at all. But like just for reference, I platinumed BioShock, the original BioShock, like the remastered version of it, like a couple months ago. And it's a great game. Love that game. I had forgotten how great it was. And
God, I need to replay it.
yeah, and all the audio diaries are like, they're some of the best audio diaries ever.
Mm-hmm.
They're amazing collectibles, but there's too fucking many. Like, there's literally 150 audio diaries.
Yeah,
and
there's got to be some sort of pacing issue with that. Like, just like,
well, yeah,
enough,
that's
enough.
That's definitely part of it. The distribution, right? Like, how do you distribute it? Like, make sure it's not too dense of a distribution in areas. And there were a lot of areas like this game where you go into one room and there's like 6 collectibles. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding? Like, it was the same thing with BioShock, where you would go in, you would listen to an audio diary, and there'd be like 4 more audio diaries just sitting right next to it. And I'm like, you could have designed this better. And that's a way smaller, way more linear game than this one. So it was too much. But yeah.
I mean, okay, anyway, so where were we? Okay, so we want to talk about the factions, right? Like, what is our opinions or what is our thoughts on them? So, I mean, Paulo, you started off. Like, I guess,
You're the resident expert.
Okay, I mean, we've already talked about the Rattlers and how they suck, so we don't really need to... I don't feel like there's anything more about them
they
to
were
say.
pretty one-note and very plot device.
By the way, I really love that moment when that Rattler guy, is threatening Ellie to get bitten by the
and she's leaning in her.
by the hanging clicker. It's like, fuck you. Watch this.
Yeah, that was great.
That was very clever.
Yeah.
Kills the other guy, shreds the guy's leg, kills him.
Yeah.
That submachine gun, by the way, that she gets from him, such a great gun. And such a great gun to have at the end of the game, too, where you're just going through the compound with, like, a silent submachine gun. It's awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, Rattlers suck, we know that. The WLF for the Wolves, they're interesting enough. I don't really have I guess my biggest problem with them, it's not actually the faction itself, it's with Isaac. Because we learn a lot about him, or we learn a good amount about him before we even meet him, if you're reading the notes and stuff.
Yeah.
The way he operates and stuff, and sort of like the creed that he distributes to the WLF about, being ruthless and all these other things. But like,
He's kind of one note. Like, there's not a lot to him when you
actually. It's not even that he's one note. It's that, like, okay, this is a guy that's also, by the way, if you didn't notice, he's played by Jeffrey Wright, who's a great actor. Most people these days would know him as Bernard from Westworld. He's an awesome actor.
We totally, like, when we heard his voice, we were like, fuck, is that what you think it is?
Yeah, I didn't even know he was in the game.
He did sound familiar.
I had no idea that he was in the game. And they had built up the character so much through the notes and stuff. And you meet him, and the first scene, it's interesting. That's fine. We don't see him for a long time until almost the end of day 3 with Abby on the island. And that's only for like 30 seconds. And then we don't see him again. And the only reason that we even know his fate is because he's mentioned by one of the wolves on a radio distress call that you hear when you get back to the theater about, like, oh yeah, by the way, like, Isaac was killed. And they're like, wait, what? And I'm like, wait, what? Like, I'm sorry, like, this villain that we've been building up for the whole game and that you've seen a little bit of, and you're like, oh man, what is he gonna do in the next scene? And then it's just like, oh, he got killed off screen by, like, somehow. I don't know. And I was like, are you kidding? Like, it would have been fine if Abby hadn't been the one to kill him. Like, I would have been fine with that. But, like, the fact that we don't see it and the fact that it's just mentioned almost nonchalantly did bother me. Yeah, it was very anticlimactic. Especially when you see, like, another villain, like the main villain of the first game, David, who's the guy who, like, he has the cannibal cult that, like, tries to do bad stuff to Ellie, and, like, she has to kill him. Like, that was a much better villain. They built him up. You got to know him sort of as a quasi ally when he's helping Ellie kill the clickers and stuff in the snow, and then he brings her back, and you realize that they're cannibals, and you realize that he has some sort of weird perverted affection for her, and that he wants to like maybe rape her or do. They didn't go into it, but you can assume.
Right.
And with Isaac, it was just it is one note, but it's more just like I feel like they almost ran out of ideas for what to do to him, to do with them, like because it's very odd how it's just like I don't even know because we all you all heard.
I mean, we see him die, right? Like remember, like when Abby confronts him, right? He gets shot by Levy's sister. What's her name?
He gets shot, but
Yara, you mean?
Yeah. He gets shot, but does he die in that scene? Because I thought he got wounded.
No, I think he died. I saw that scene twice. He definitely got shot several times to the chest, like the back of him. And then they reacted immediately. But you didn't see him, like, you didn't get to see him, you know what I mean? Like, you don't see him give his last breath. But you can safely assume, okay, he died that way. That's how he died.
I guess I misremembered. I thought that she only got one shot off him because like I remember them like destroying her with bullets. But I guess that's a little bit better. But it's still,
they did it super fast, so I can understand.
You didn't do anything with them, like. Because
Yeah,
they have like other
they put
characters that like they built up in the notes that I thought they would introduce that they didn't. Like alongside of when they were like building up with Isaac through the notes, but they didn't introduce them in the game. And I was like, that's fine because it's just their side stories. That's totally fine. And I almost feel like Isaac maybe should have just been a side story, and you hear about him, but you don't actually interact with him. If they were just gonna only have 2 scenes with him.
Well, yeah, I think he
never
was
really
kind of a
got
plot
the
device, right, for the character. In
Yeah.
a sense that put her in a
I
situation
never really.
that like what I mean, remember she said like right after she had killed like so many people, and then Isaac dies by Yara. She's all Lev is just saying it's like, what, you killed all your people, and like what are you doing, kind of thing, like why? And then she just straight up says to her, you're my people. So that's like that big moment, turning point where she's like finally admitting,
I mean, I feel like she always was like that though. She never really had any allegiance to the WLF. It was more like, these are the closest thing to the Fireflies that I can find, and like until I find something better, this is pretty much the way I'm gonna survive. I felt like she had an allegiance to Owen, but she didn't have an allegiance to the WLF. Like, I never felt that way.
I know, right? Like, that's the thing that was kind of contradictory of, like, what's going on. Like, the way she acted wasn't, like, she was very devout, like, wolf, WLF. And then near the end, it's just kind of like she's been put in this situation where it's like, are you going to, like, why is this here? Like, why is this scene here? If she wasn't that devout anyways, like, we all already know that she's going to just, like, say, whatever, kill me now, or she's going to fight to save each other. But, I don't know.
I didn't think it was contradictory. I felt like it made sense. And I feel like, especially with all the letters you see of survivors and who are like, man, I don't like the faction I'm in, whether it's WLF or Seraphites or whatever, or Hunters or Fireflies. They're like, I mean, in this world, it's like, okay, well, you run with a bigger group of people, you have a better chance of surviving.
Yeah, there was like that one
that's
note.
Just what Abby was doing.
Yeah, that one note that said, like, I don't care who rescues me right now, like Seraphite or WLF, I'll go with them. So it's like, like there's people that like are just only aligning with people just on basis of survival. But,
I mean, I know that anyone aside from the Seraphites are really devout though, because like even like to their faction, like is like even like in the first one, the Hunters and stuff, like, and even some of the Fireflies, they were like, it's pretty much like, this is the best group to be with. Like, this is how I'm going to get the most stuff. This is how I'm going to survive. like the Seraphites, and I guess this is a good way to transition into them, is like they're like, you know, they're a cult. They're you have to prove yourself, right? And like you have to be devout, and if you're not devout, bad things are going to happen to you. And we see that with, you know, we see that in that like that terrible scene, that like we see the aftermath of it, where like Lev's mother tries to kill him,
Right.
because he comes back after shaming her, right? Like, because she's so devout, and he you know, he is, they talk about it, how he you know, he basically, he started off as a young girl, and because they call her Lily and stuff, and he didn't want to be that. He wanted to be something else. He wanted to be a male, and so he shaved his head, which is against their rules. Right. And then
can I say that, you know, I totally missed the part when I probably wasn't paying attention, when they call her Lily, and you know, I remember that specific line dialogue when they're like, "Oh, the fight. Did they just call you?" I'm like, "Yeah, it doesn't matter." You know, okay, Lev. You know, I didn't pick on that, and this is how slow I am. I didn't
either. You know, I didn't realize they start attacking you.
Yeah, it's in the middle of a gameplay that you hear them say, "It's Lily," and then like, "It's apostate."
Yeah, but exactly. They call it apostate, and like, I really like how well portrayed this cult is, because it's not just so one-dimensional. Like, there is something to be, you know, to admire about them. But just going back to Lev, I like his character, but for the longest time, I had no idea he was trans. Like, seriously, it took me, my slow ass brain, to, like, you know, that moment when Yara and Abby are talking about like how he felt inside, that it just all clicked together. I'm like, oh, I'm a fucking moron.
Well, I mean, I don't agree with that. I mean, I feel like it's just like, I think they do a good job of not overemphasizing it, not making it like, oh, okay, this is about trans rights and all that. It's like, no, it's just like, there are a lot of different people in this world. We already know that Ellie is gay, and you know, like, people are dealing with a lot of the same issues they're dealing with today,
with a lot of
except
issues.
they're dealing with it in the apocalypse.
Yeah,
you know, like,
they're trying to survive in the apocalypse with the situation that they're at.
And then and going, you know, it's just, it's the same issues where they're like, still, even with the world ending and these terrible monsters and all this stuff, they're still, you know, being ostracized even then, you know, and it's
it's almost like, in my opinion, on like what they're doing with all these factions, is that it's an inevitability that groups of people will find a way to, you know, congregate together and survive together. Whether it be using some sort of doctrine or using just a basis of survival, and this is what it takes. Like, it's all such a natural, normal, like, assumption to say, to have, you know, these people do that. So like, I feel like the two factions are pretty well fleshed out. Like, we spent more time with them, and it's nice because even while you're doing the stealth missions and the missions where you're either fighting them or you're just trying to crawl past them, you're getting like small glimpse of who they are and, you know, what they do. And it's just like so constant that again, it comes back to like, why did we have to have that third faction? It was that to me was definitely plotty, you know, extremely plotty, where it's just like, they're only there to move the story. So it's unfortunate. I rather have them just not. They could have easily done that with the Seraphites. Like, I don't know, capture the Seraphites, capture them, or maybe it's another subsection of the Seraphites. They're not even. They're like, I don't know, like there were once Seraphites and they left, and they captured Abby. And thinking, I don't know, you know, just the fact that she was associated with a group that maybe she even didn't really believe in, sure, but at the same time, she still allied with them, right? So, like, I feel like there's this kind of, like, military duty kind of feeling that you get from her, but at the same time, I also understand that she definitely didn't, like, she was very willing to, like, you know, fuck it, you know, fuck the WLF if it meant my friends were in danger, which was very clear in the fact that they gave a nickname to her specific group of people that was once
The
firefighters.
scars.
Which is cool. I like that too, because that really kind of like added another lore to it that you didn't get to hear much of like, man, what are the things that they did do between the times of them training and then them become fully realized? Because he sounds like Isaac super like depends on them. That means that they're like, they must be really good at what they do. And I kind of wish we had more of that a little bit, not experiencing necessarily, but at least understanding like maybe an example of some more like situations that they run into together, something similar to like, okay, we understand that Tommy and Joel, like, they've been through a lot of shit, but you get these hints of like these kind of things that they stick with, like these strategies they stick with, they learned over time. And I wish that we learned that from Abby's group too, that they learn some shit and they are effective at what they do because they learned it while doing it. And we would get more context to how they assimilated to the wolves, you know, or how their characters made the wolves such a powerhouse, because I feel like we're missing that story. Maybe I didn't pick up a notepad or whatever on that, but I feel like there's that missing thing. But they're really good.
Story between, yeah, I feel like the story between the factions are, like, again, continuing the themes of like the feud, uselessness of the cycle of violence, because first we find how the faction of Fedra, which we never really ever see ever again, ever since the first game, is pretty much consumed by the smaller group that started off as the WLF, and how it eventually it starts consuming Fedra, and how like tensions within the Fedra group just to start breaking it from within. And then and we see the exact same thing happening with the Seraphites, where people start defecting to the Seraphites, and it's tensions within it to start breaking out within. And I think that's exactly what Isaac would risk such a risky maneuver as to try to invade the Seraphites, because he's seen how Fedra was destroyed from within. With the by the WLF, and he's afraid that exact same fate is going to happen to them.
Right. With
especially
Owen, let's be, for me, when I was getting in that story or getting in there where she's trying to chase after Owen, I really thought that Owen was actually gonna like he's defecting to the fucking scars or some shit. Like, I thought that was where it was going, but yeah. Was there any assumptions that people had about the how about this? Like, do you think that, like, not necessarily on the assumption of like, yeah, this is the natural situation that they run into, but do you feel at all that like the two groups they made were kind of the easy group to create? You get what I'm saying? Like, would have been...
You think that there would have been much more interesting factions to create other than these the wolves and the Seraphites?
Yeah. Do you think it was too easy for them to make groups like this? Like, it's like, oh yeah, this is a military group that's kind of like an outcast version of like the previous military, and then like, oh, let's just make another cult.
I think it makes sense, especially from it makes sense from how you're introduced to the story. Like, you're first giving the you're already familiar with the zombies. You want some sort of faction that's going to be similar to to the previous factions that you faced before, like Fedra and the Fireflies. And and you can see it like and then you have something that wasn't tackled in the previous game, and that's something that that's going to always be prevalent in our in our society. That's going to be religion.
I'm honestly surprised actually that they didn't tie in a religious aspect to the infection. You know what I mean? Like, why couldn't it's like there has to be balance to somebody.
The Seraphites there.
Yeah, the Seraphites are like, they're religious in their kind of way of thinking about it, but they didn't like go as far as to deityize, I guess you could say. I don't know what the right word is for, or make them into gods, right? Like I thought that we were going that direction a little bit because they they would say, "Oh, there's the demons," right? Like Lev would say that, and then I'm like, "Oh, are we getting into this? Like, do they think that? Do they worship the to some degree? Not worship, but do they say that the infected people are really just the outcome of humanity, and we just did it all wrong, and these are spirits in some weird form?" I almost feel like that, like they could have tied more into the cult aspect to the infection, in the sense that like this is the kind of world that we're living in. Like at any point in time, you figured that they would have related these demons, like to them, the demons, to their.
I mean, but
world.
they see them as that, as punishment for the sins of mankind.
Right.
They don't, they do see them in a religious aspect, but only in the sense that they are that, that which you want to avoid. That
they're just
the
a
punishment
consequence.
that. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
That's nature reclaiming humanity for its sins against it, and that's why they quote unquote avoid avoid modern
Technology.
modern innovation, technology. Yeah, exactly. I definitely like how, even within the very religious sect and how much they are dedicated to it. There's still hypocrisy within their groups as to, especially
the
their
soldiers
warriors.
could use the technology.
Yeah.
They're okay using the soldiers are okay using with the guns as long as it was used for like whatever, like they're classified under that group. They've been chosen.
As long as it benefits the group,
Yeah, I mean, definitely like that conversation was interesting. There's always these contradictions and these hypocritical elements. And I think, that also goes along line with the story of, like, the characters, too, because a lot of things they, like, I mean, you could like, like, humans are naturally contradicting, like, hypocrisy is, it's not saying that is justified, like, hypocrisy is bad, but
it's just human nature.
It's just human nature, though. Yeah. That's the thing,
Yeah, of course.
And then when it comes down to it, it's like, survival is definitely an equation.
What was the name of the what was the name of the mother holy figure that they adopted?
See, I don't even.
They forget her name. They just
forget her name.
Did they say her name?
There was a name.
It was a specific person. Because it was a specific person who was captured. I forget by.
It was by February. Yeah, and then she was like smiling in a crazy way, and then she was setting off bombs and stuff. But I don't know if they actually said her name.
I could have sworn I did, but I don't remember the name, to be honest. I'm surprised we didn't get more into that too.
Like the prophet or whatever, but I don't remember. I don't think they actually called her by a name.
Okay, well, all right. So what else is there? Okay.
Wait, hang on. Before we keep going, D'Angelo, are you in the group?
Oh yeah, I'm in the chat.
Oh, hello, sir.
Oh, hey, man, what's going on?
How's it going, man?
Howdy doody. Well, you just ran into. We're recording this for our podcast, by the way. And
we were just talking about The Last of Us, like we're doing a spoiler cast.
A spoiler cast on it, and our opinions and stuff about it. So yeah. Okay, so what else is there that we haven't touched on? So we talked about the beginning, the ending, our opinions on the factions. We talked a little bit about the gameplay, sorta. I think. Who
was your favorite enemy to fight against? Simple question. Personally, to me, it was the Seraphites, because especially the very first time that you meet them.
That encounter's awesome. Yeah, where they're like, cause you're walking through, and then like she just gets hit by an arrow, and you hear like the fucking whispers, and I heard the fucking whistles, and it's like, oh man, this is kind of creepy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to say the yeah.
Yeah, Star Fights were fun.
Mhm.
Yeah, is getting those whistles and stuff like they used was very clever. Like it's like
Yeah.
right away I knew what, like I understood, like this is how they operated,
They
and it's
communicate.
really
Yeah.
smart.
I would say for me, I kind of still I like fighting the infected the most. I think because the way, like, obviously you have new enemies like the stalkers and the shamblers, and then you have sort of slightly, very very slightly retooled. They slightly retooled the bloaters from the way they were in the first game. Like the bloaters in this one they're like juggernauts. Like they're fucking hard to take down. Whereas in the first one they're slightly harder to take down, but it's more that they have the fucking the acid bombs that they throw, and that was like the biggest threat of them in the first one. But I like the way they sort of mix, like the first time you meet like a shambler who are also fucking like they're
Shamblers. I fucking hate them.
they're a pain, dude.
In a good way.
Yeah, exactly, in a great way. Like, but the first time you meet like shamblers and stuff, like you'll use the listen mode to see, okay, there's a shambler over here, there's a shambler over here. Maybe I use like a smoke bomb, and then like I set some trap mines down and stuff to stun them, and then like runners will come out like as I'm fighting them, and it changes the dynamic of the fight in really interesting ways. Because you fight runners in very different ways than you fight shamblers. Like with runners, the way I would usually, like if there's like one or two, like I'll just melee them to death. It's no big deal.
Yeah.
But then if you're meleeing them and you're in the animation, the shamblers are like coming up behind you, and because they have that AoE attack where they just like detonate and like have the acid spray, it makes it like you really have to think about, okay, do I take out the runners first? Or do I take out a shambler, or what do I do? And it's the same thing with the clickers and the bloaters, because again they would mix and match a lot of those as well. And in Dina, even the first time you fight like clickers and runners in the same like environment, she's like, okay, I think we should take out the runners first, because if you take out the clicker in the animation, because the clickers can't see you, they can only hear you. If you take out the clicker and a runner's right in front of you, he's going to charge you while you're in the animation. Whereas the other way around, if you take out the runners first, they won't make noise when you're fighting them, so the clickers won't be attracted to you.
Dude, I love some of the adjustments to the combat that they did, because you can literally feed a runner to a clicker.
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest thing, dude.
So cool.
That's the coolest thing, and this wasn't in the original game, but it was in the Left Behind DLC in one encounter, and I remember reviewing it, and people were like, oh man, this is the coolest thing, and I played it, and I'm like, yeah, this is awesome, is the way that you can fucking use the infected and people against each other. Like,
Right.
like when you're in the tunnels with Dina in the subway tunnels, and it's like that saturated, awesome red environment. And like, and there's like clickers, and they're like, oh shit, clickers, let's be quiet. And I just hid and like threw a bottle at one of the guys, and they're like, what the fuck? And then the clickers like charged them. Like, that's the fucking most awesome thing. Yeah. That is such a cool feeling. And then you just stealth around all of it. Like, that's the fucking best feeling.
Yeah. That was very satisfying. I actually kind of wish they had more of that, and that's also if we have it might give some more, like, at least some sort of, like, we don't like the Santa Barbara faction at all, but I did like having to unchain it infected and then have it run around. Amok. That was definitely a fun thing to do. I felt very much like a Walking Dead situation right there. That 100%. Felt like
that's what I thought too. Yeah.
So it, I mean, like that had its merits. But still, I didn't like that faction in general. But I liked the setting. Yeah. The setting was great, but the faction, I didn't care about.
I tried so hard to do the same things where, like, to grab one of those guys and fit it to the clickers. But I would always just, my dumb ass would just run into, like, bad situations where, like, I would go through an entrance and somebody would surprise me with a shotgun to the face, and the clicker would be right behind me. I'm like, God damn.
No, one of the funniest fucking things that I did was, like, I think the first It's not even a clicker, it's a runner. The first runner that you see on the chain in that part, and you shoot it, and there's like, I'm like not doing anything. I'm sitting back and watching, and he's like killing like 5 or 6 fucking like of these guys. And I'm like, this is insane. Like, how long is this gonna go on? And he's just like killing them. They're screaming and they're shooting, and he's just like, every one of them is going down. It's like the funniest fucking thing. I'm like, I wonder if I can almost like drive this guy around to the rest of the fucking group and just kill all of them, because that would be amazing.
That was your favorite killing moment, I suppose, right?
Yes, that was my favorite killing moment, and a segue into sort of a next topic or even subtopic. I think it'll be short, but my favorite encounter, my favorite like combat encounter in the entire game. I love it so much, and it's fucking hardcore, fucking survival horror. Is on day 2 with Abby when you're looking for the medical supplies.
Yeah,
and you're in you're in ground zero.
Mm-hmm.
That's expensive, dude.
That was so good.
Not just the monster itself, like in the way she's like running from it, and she's like, "Get away from me, get away!" She's like, she doesn't want it. She's like, "I don't even want to fight this thing." And the way they're like basically as you're fighting it, this like super clicker thing like peels off of it, and like you have to deal with that.
That was disturbing.
That's so fucking gross and cool, and I like how they tied it into the story and made it plausible in the world by saying, okay, this is ground zero of Seattle, so it's like super concentrated here, so it would make sense that like a weird anomaly like that would happen, right? Like it's not a shambler or a stalker or a new type of infected. It's just an anomalous 1 in a million situation where this giant thing is fucking, all these things are molded together by the fungus. And that's the fucking result. I loved it so much.
Yeah.
Fun fact, that thing is called the Rat King. And I was looking it up online. A Rat King is an actual real life term.
I know. It's rats that their tails get tangled up and they become a giant organism. It's really gross.
That is disgusting.
It's really gross.
It just so perfectly describes this thing, because it's just this like conglomeration of like twisted, morphed clicker, human bodies. This is disgusting.
It's so cool, man. I love that so much.
That was definitely my favorite. Yeah, like the whole like you're running through the hallway and shit like that and getting being chased.
Yeah,
that was fantastic.
Definitely. Yeah, you're definitely there with Abby going like, "What the fuck? Oh my god! Get away!"
Yeah.
It was so cringe when you saw the fucking thing peel off. The organs just dangling and shit. Oh, I was like,
because the stalkers would do that sometimes too, where they'd be in the wall and
that
embedded
me
fungus, and they would like peel out of it. It was so gross, dude. Like, it was like, this is disgusting. Like, sometimes you could see them and you could like kill them like before they got out of it, right? Like you could see that, oh, this guy's not attached. Like you can see like his pants, and you can see that he's wearing clothing, and you could like he stands out a bit more, so you could like headshot him and like take him out. But a lot of times, like there would be like naked ones that are totally blend into the wall, and you like when you're going to get the gas mask for Lev, and like you pick it up, and you're like, okay, I'm done, and you've already passed the fucking wall before, and you're going out, and it just peels off and attacks you. I'm like, oh, that's so disgusting. It's so gross. Like it really unnerved me.
Yeah. They really did a good job with that aspect. It really should be one of those things where like people need to take note of like, okay, that's how you do those jump scares.
I mean, like that's how you like diversify the encounters with the same basic 4 enemies, right? Is like you change the way they interact with the environment, and like the way they like even like the stalkers, the way they hide in the environment and stuff, and they wait for you like in packs, but they ambush you, and you'll run away, and if you don't kill them when you shoot them, they'll run, and if you follow them, they'll like lead you into the rest of the pack, and it's just like that's really being inventive with like. So it doesn't feel like the encounters ever get old, where it's like, oh, this is a clicker, this is a runner, I know how to kill these things, no problem. It's like, this is a clicker, this is a runner, oh shit, there's a stalker in the wall, and I didn't see him, and if you take a different approach, you could have avoided that situation entirely. But maybe you ran in too fast, or maybe you went left instead of right, and it changed the encounter completely.
Yeah, I definitely liked how the hunt, especially specifically the stalkers, always made the scenarios with the rest of the clickers and the rest of the infected, like always varied because
Yeah,
the hunters, the stalkers always try to flank you. They always try to like
right.
surround you, just before attacking you, and that always made things tense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
Whereas the
in
other,
one of the notes they were describing like how like their first sighting of a stalker, and they were like, yeah, like you need to be careful of these guys because even though they're not like tactical to a human extent, where they are
Mhm.
still coordinated, and a lot of times they'll attack you from behind, which is
Yeah.
very different than the way any of the other infected like act.
Yeah. I like the fact that they also, the WLF, and I think to an extent their fights do use dogs, right?
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah, the dogs.
yeah,
God, I felt so bad
yeah.
every time I killed one of them.
Honestly,
Mm-hmm.
yes, I know, because actually my favorite kill is actually the very first time that I encountered those dogs, because
Mm,
I knew that I kind of saw I knew exactly what they were gonna do. They were gonna introduce them. There's a specific door that you're hiding sort of behind,
yeah.
where they're obviously gonna come through. So you
You just
know
yeah.
I, I
You
just put
could
a
see the
mine right
scent
there,
trail
blew
too.
them to
Yeah.
chunks. Hmm. It's like, oh, I feel I don't feel guilty about this. That was satisfying to blow both the dog and his owner to chunks.
um, yeah,
Yeah,
you
and
know what, the dogs, like I never had to worry too much about the whole like them sniffing me out. It happened in the beginning, like where they would
Yeah,
track me and shit, and I was like, ah, God, it's worrisome. But then eventually,
yeah.
like I don't know, I don't know, it just wasn't that big of a deal. Eventually, I think always like
mm,
Yeah.
my biggest concern was actually not the fight between humans. It was actually just the fighting the infected, actually, because they
mm,
soaked up so
Yeah.
much damage for me when I was
Mm.
playing through that
yeah,
it made it a problem. And that's a funny thing. See, I played it on the easiest difficulty only because I wanted to get through the story quick.
yeah.
Mhm.
And ironically, like I find myself in a situation where I'm landing my shots, I'm not missing, but
Right.
these fucking zombies, they take a fucking beating, and I'm all like,
Yeah.
this is
Oh
on
yeah.
the easiest difficulty. I can't imagine like you put on like even harder difficulty, like
Right
Oh,
and
and
grounded, where you only have like two crayons, a pencil, and one brick to kill 16 guys.
yeah,
and
yeah,
you don't
yeah,
have listen mode at all, so you just have to rely on your senses. Yeah.
yeah.
No, I mean,
Actually, I heard.
I
Yeah.
played the first, like my first run, I did as on normal. And
Mm.
some of those fights are definitely hard. Like,
Oh yeah.
especially that fight we were talking about with the like anomalous giant fucking rat king blob. That thing, like I played that again yesterday when I was getting all the collectibles, but I was doing it on very easy, so I could just go through quickly and get the collectibles. And like
Right.
even on very easy, like that's not an easy fight. Like if you
Mhm.
don't if you like if you just kind of run and gun in, like
Hmm.
you're gonna die. Like you still need to be
Right.
strategic at least to some extent.
Yeah, it's actually interesting how like the variation in like difficulty, like it really came down to just like where you are using your items and where are you exhausting
Mm,
it too much. Like, you know
yeah,
what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, if you can avoid the fight, you definitely should avoid the fight because you're eventually going to need
yeah,
that ammo and
Hmm.
medkits later or whatever. Because
right,
like it's like I could tell that if I ramping up the difficulty would be like, oh yeah, definitely you're gonna run out of shit pretty quickly.
yeah,
Yeah.
It's even, and I could tell that even at the easiest difficulty, which was easy, like it was
Mhm.
yeah,
100% easy, like especially in those some fights where I chose to, fuck it, I'm just gonna go in, run and gun, like it was easy to melee people down and kill them, but I knew if I ended up making the difficulty any higher, that like I would have to be very conscious about where I'm gonna have a melee fight, because I know those melee
right,
fights based on what I played from the previous game, that melee fights leave you vulnerable as fuck. So yeah, I think this game they kind of nailed the difficulty right, in the sense that you can
Hmm.
still like in a non-headache way get through the game, even if it's
yeah,
highly
Yeah.
difficult. Like
yeah,
versus say like games where you're just constantly hitting a brick wall, and you just don't know what the fuck you have to do to get around it. But
Right.
in this game, it's very like you're just very aware of what you are capable of doing, and
Yeah.
They definitely give you more than enough tools to get around all that stuff.
right.
In fact,
Yeah.
there's one tool I never used. I never used a single explosive arrow.
Oh, really?
yeah,
Those are fun. They do a lot of damage.
yeah.
I can imagine.
pretty
Just
fun
seeing
to
them
see
blow
them
to
blow
blow
up.
to chunks is always fun.
I think I waited until the last encounter with the Rattlers to do that. Like, because at that point I was just like, I don't like this part of. I don't like these guys.
Yeah.
Like, I'm kind of getting fatigued with the story. Like, let's just get this done. And I was just running and gunning at that point. I'm just like, I'm just gonna fucking kill these guys with everything I have. I'm pretty sure, like, I didn't know when the ending was, but I'm like, I feel like this is probably the end. Like, this is probably the
Right,
end,
I
so
don't
I'm just
need
gonna fucking run in
right.
and kill these guys.
I don't need to conserve anything. Kind of
And at that point, Ellie's rage became my own, and I was just like, I'm just gonna fucking murder her. I don't care about stealth anymore.
Yeah, what was else there? So yeah, difficulty, yeah, and then the encounters, the boss fights. Okay, what about I, it, I mean, I guess we already
The
touched on
fist
this.
fight?
Like the
What,
ending
the fist
fight
fight
was
between
really good. I like that. I like those animated like the fights where you just L1. Oh yeah, right. Okay, how about this one? I actually enjoyed the fight when you're Abby facing that one fucking dude that was about to kill Lev with the big giant pickaxe or something. Like
Yeah.
island. That was cool. I
the
really
one where
liked that
she
one.
gives him the one where she opens up his mouth.
Yes,
Oh,
that
yeah.
one was so brutal. It's
Yeah.
so brutal, but I liked it, and I think that was one of my top favorite kind of like fight sequence fights.
Yeah.
But then
Mhm.
number one was definitely the ending one. It was like I just did not want them to like die, either of them. So it was like
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
it's I relate it to like the Metal Gear Solid, was it Metal Gear 4 ending between Snake and what would be technically Liquid but not really. Right? So like that fight that they had was just like is akin to the same thing that I was seeing here, but just better. Like better in the sense that I really invested in both the character's story and literally don't want either of them to die. Yet,
They all did Kojima in that aspect, right? Because he always kind of has a fight like that. It's also in spoiler, a little bit of a spoiler there. Death Stranding.
Yes, right. That was another one. Yeah.
Yeah,
they did something similar to that, but it's not nearly as good as this. This one really nailed it in terms of like your investment into the, I guess you could say rivalry, but you know, like in an extent where you really don't want either of the characters to go. So it's
honestly one of my other favorite moments was fighting Ellie as Abby, the very first time in the theater.
Yeah, that was cool. Yeah.
Yeah,
I love the fact that I'm walking by and I'm like, wait, what? Yeah,
like,
what is this beeping sound? And I just like blow up.
Yeah, because she's
love the
setting
fact she can
traps and
use-
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
Oh right, yeah. I love that too because I was all like, "Oh man, you're employing the strategy that I always fucking abused." Because I use that shit all the time. I use it so much. I did the whole, it's like that Metal Gear thing where you just like to fuck around with the AI, and that's what it was like for me. Where I just like, go there, go to the sound, you want to, and then get blown up.
Right.
And then they all conjure again, and then like I already have another mine somewhere else, and they blow up there, and then they're all like, it was just like constant, like just seeing the chaos happen was just hilarious.
Just before you say your one-liner, like, here, since you're all together, get a drink.
It's like, I don't know, when you do stealth well, it's really, really fun. Moment that you feel like you're the fucking Rambo of the situation, and people are just like, something's being blown up because somebody blew up, and then the other one's running over there. What's going on? But then you're like behind somebody else already, like slitting their throat. Like, you feel so badass when you do shit like that, and you're fucking around with AI in that way.
For sure.
And they really do make it even more satisfying because the way they talk and how fucked up they are too, because like you get to witness the fucked up shit that they do. And
well, it's also cool because like the AI is like it's smart enough so that like if you're stealthing through a section and you hear like two people talking, and even if like they're around the corner from each other, but they're like chatting casually. If you kill one mid sentence, the other one will be like, "Wait, like that's not how sentences end. What the fuck's going on?" And it'll like,
Yeah, right.
it'll attack
Yeah.
you.
I was worried about that. I actually didn't want to do it just because I wanted to hear what they're talking about. But I'm glad that somebody tested that out because I was like thinking, what if I kill them?
No, I mean, yeah, for sure. Usually I would wait as well, but like I was like, okay, they started talking, and then I was like, okay, they ended, and they started walking away, but they like started talking again right as I was like killing the guy, and he's like, "Are you there?" He's like, "Frank," and he's like comes back and starts to kill me. I'm like, "Oh fuck, that's really cool."
I actually that
just doesn't happen in most games, right? Like that's like most games. It's just like, oh, they end the conversation. There's like, "Hey, you there?" And then they'll wait, and they're like, "I guess you're there. Bye." It's like, okay, I mean,
they
the
have
guy's
like
probably
Alzheimer's.
Dead. Like, it's
they forgot that they were talking to somebody.
Yeah, exactly.
But
I guess it could be a good segue to like one of the things about this game that is just so filled with like so many details.
Yeah,
like it's just so well crafted. Like they thought out everything. Like from the fact that the AI communicates with each other to how your own character kind of expresses certain for example Abby, who expresses her fear of heights every time you get close to a ledge and you look down. You see her physically like even the camera, kind of becomes this kind of like fisheye lens that makes the height look even bigger.
Right. Even from the very beginning, when we first meet her, before we even know she has a fear of heights, and she's like going towards the lodge, like with Owen, and she's like, "Wait, what is this?" And he's like, "It's just a ledge. Calm down. It's fine." She's like, "No, I'm not. I'm not doing this." And she goes over she's going past the cliff, shimmying across, and she's like, "Oh God." He's like, "Okay, it's fine, Abby. Don't worry." Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Using the philosophy, a little bit of the Lev's brought up philosophy and trying to like calm her down, harness fear and stuff like that is interesting. And I like that. I keep on thinking that I'm all like, "Oh man, I'm watching Aang and Korra get along." So
by the
way,
I really love that moment when she's walking across that crane, and she's like in so much fear, and Lev just brings up the whole Owen thing. It's like,
oh,
so what's
God.
up with that Owen guy? And she's like, are you fucking kidding me right now?
Love that. That's my favorite line. Because it just like it relates so well to like what's happening in the current story, and it made me chuckle so hard. Like that's what I was I think that was literally. I'm so glad you bring that up because that's literally the big point for me where I was like, I'm invested in this story. Like this is like even with all like that kind of like the thing about like and this is a great segue to the next subject is all the kind of backlash is getting from like the story and like it's just trying to shove the LGBTQ kind of conversation in the and then like the reverse people is like trying to use that as like a guard against like, oh man, they killed Joel, like god damn it, motherfuckers. And then I'm all like, man, it's like you just using that as excuses as well to just like you just don't want that character to die. But anyway, so I was all like, man, if only you guys just get past all that shit and just keep playing the game. Because when I got to that point where like they had that banter, I was just like, I'm in. I'm all in. Like I want them to succeed at what they're doing, regardless of like knowing what she had already done.
Yeah, I remember thinking with Lev just before they actually head off on that adventure when like Owen is like talking to her and like trying to talk about what happened last night. I was thinking with Lev, I was thinking, man, if I was that kid, I would be thinking, I know that my sister is dying and this is a dire situation and all, but holy shit, this is awkward.
This is awkward, yeah.
And I just love the fact that he brought that up later on.
He brought that up, yeah. It's great. Very self-aware kind of story here. Like very intentional. So let's talk about this like that whole controversy. I think this would is there anything else to talk about other that? I mean, we could
I
end it
feel
off with
like
that.
we covered everything. I think.
Okay, all right. So let's just talk about it straight up. Like, all right, so everybody hates the whole, you know,
Joel dying.
Joel dying,
You
and
know,
some
you know,
opinions
to
will,
be
talk
yeah,
about
to
like,
be fair,
story, plot
yeah,
device. He's just being used that way, and then other people are just trying to say, oh, this was just an excuse to kind of put the uh like there's a religious
I,
connotation to the cult, and then there's
mhm.
the whole, like, obviously LGBTQ conversation.
Ugh.
Mm.
But
Um,
yeah, what I
you
mean,
know,
I'm pretty sure everybody has the same talking points. But go on.
right. I was just gonna say that when it comes to Joel, I can kind of at least meet them halfway through to their anger for Joel, because the very first time that I saw that scene, I was just angry, like right there,
Mm.
like I was just angry that it happened. I was
Sure.
almost like I was mad at angry. Like it felt like, oh, this is just for shock value, but I
And
took a
it
step
was,
back. Yeah.
I
But that's
mean,
like at the beginning game. When you played through the game, what was it like? Did you reflect further back to that? Was it more accepting that they made that story? Was it purposeful in the sense that, like, you were supposed to feel angry? I mean, I'm not trying to guide what you're trying to think, but, like, tell us, like,
Mhm.
what was your experience of, like, your first reaction, but then eventually at the end of the whole game, did you think that it really did close all the loops and
You
justify
know,
everything?
like just saw the I just saw the narrative, and like I'm thinking, okay, I'm angry, and I think that that's part of the that's definitely part of the narrative that they're trying to build. The fact that you're supposed to look, to feel angry, to be shocked, to feel like somebody pulled the rug right under you, because that's exactly the situation that uh, the
yeah,
alien that everybody's facing right over here. So I thought, I know that I'm angry, and that I'm meta angry, and that if if it might feel like this is done just for shock value, but let's give the narrative a chance. And I think that it
right,
more than redeem itself, like in the end, because
right,
you know we have an Ellie who you know feels like she has been robbed of an opportunity to start over a life with her father figure.
yeah,
And I think that's exactly her biggest motivation, and seeking this revenge, not so much the fact of just revenge, but the fact that she wants to she wants to get back at the fact that she never felt like she had that kind of closure with uh
mm,
again, going back to that theme of like being able trying to forgive um Joel. He never really felt like she had that kind of closure, that that chance to forgive him.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
But it is at the very end. It isn't until the very. It isn't until that that you see that cutscene where he's um when when you see the flashback to her trying to have a conversation with him, that you realize why she felt so guilty, and also the fact that she did have that moment. She, in the end, when she's like playing her guitar and she's unable to play it because she, her, some of her fingers are missing,
yeah,
realize she has a moment of like epiphany, that she's like, well, I did forgive him.
Okay, all right. What about you,
yeah.
Paul? What was your thoughts on, like, the initial reaction, and then till the end of the journey? Did it all, like, wrap up justified or not justified? Do you want it more? Was there something, like, more that the story should have touched upon? Anything like that?
No, I mean it's I'm pretty much echoing Carlos's sentiment. I never like I get like the initial like. I mean, let's just first of all, let's go back to again. I didn't see any of the leaks or anything, but I heard about some of them afterwards. After I had played the game, like I listened to podcasts and stuff, and I think one of the main leaks was like a picture of a dead Joel. And a lot of people, like obviously before the game came out and before they played it, they were like, "Oh fuck this!" Like no, like what? And then like my initial reaction, all that is the same as it is to any other spoilers, especially before you experience the thing, where it's just like, dude, context is everything. You don't know how this is gonna work. Like you don't know how this is gonna play out. And so when I did, play the game, and I saw, that sequence where Abby kills Joel right in front of Ellie, like I felt angry too, but I felt angry because I knew the character, and I felt angry because Ellie was like dying inside when that happened, and she's screaming and she's yelling and she's pleading like, please stop, like please don't do this. And I was like, I felt angry because I felt angry as Ellie felt angry, right? Like I felt like it was like,
you felt angry with her, all together.
yeah, it was like, okay, I want revenge now too. Like I spend all this time with Joel as well. Like I want revenge. Like fuck you, Abby. Like I'm gonna fucking kill you. And then like obviously you learn about Abby and her whole thing. We've already talked about it, but it's like I felt, yeah. I mean that whole situation, it doesn't bother me. The whole Joel thing doesn't bother me. I was sad. I was angry in the moment for sure, and it sucks that Joel is dead for sure. But like it, again, as we've already said, it plays on the entire theme of the entire game. That it's
It's all
that
on
everything
all on
has
point.
consequences, and all of it, it's just his past catching up with him, right?
Yeah,
like that's the whole thing. That's all it is.
It's all consistent with the overall world that they're in.
Yeah, I mean,
that they
like
want to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah, again, and I get the anger towards it all, but like it plays by the rules that have been established.
So here's an interesting thing. Like it's great that we're getting to this part. I think it might even like further assist like my view on people's backlash. So you two had completely not like you just completely alien from the spoilers, right? You never heard anything, correct?
Yeah.
From both of you?
Yeah.
Okay. So
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I was pretty diligent on like avoiding like pretty much like the spoilers. I knew that it existed, and then I don't know if it might have changed my. I mean, I think it did. It changed my experience. So, in my experience,
but you did have it spoiled.
Not literally, inadvertently.
Okay, I'll just let you explain.
So basically, I had been told that the backlash had to do with a religious aspect, and that one character that everybody loved died, and unfortunately, because the person didn't like, obviously, person's nameless. I'm not like witch hunting here or anything, but like it was
Trump, wasn't it? Fucking Trump.
But so basically,
something
like,
else, son of a bitch.
Like just saying the fact that a character that was loved or something or beloved or somebody that they liked died, it's like, oh man, if you didn't say that, I wouldn't have figured it out beforehand, because I did. I figured it out long before the game. Like as soon as I started the game, I just fucking knew that was gonna happen, because there's only two characters in the game that you can say that's gonna die, and I'm all like, oh man, I really hope it's Ellie, because
I know, right?
Because like I knew it was gonna go that route, and people are gonna fucking hate the game just because Joel died, and
of course,
like so now, so in my experience in the game, I already was dead set like just letting the story play out, and I had the only emotional reaction I had was just, damn, that's disturbing. That's it. I didn't have this kind of like innate anger that I'm positive the designers and the writers wanted you to feel, which you two felt,
and that you would have,
and that you would be invested in Ellie's journey. Exactly. Right. And then like the journey would then like, would you and you said it already, like you were invested in Ellie's journey with revenge. It was satisfying up until a point where you flipped the story, and now you're Abby, and now you're like maybe like annoyed or possibly anger by the situation, like why am I playing this fucking character? And then but then when you go through that person, then you're just getting this whole resolve of like that journey of like, oh, this is another person, this is not just some villain here. And the big aha moment is, of course, Joel fucking killed her father, right? The doctor.
Right.
So it's like,
who was like literally the best guy in the world. He was like,
he was a really nice dude
who could fucking, who could have saved everybody. He saved the zebra from the barbed wire. He was like such a nice guy, and
he himself was just also grounded in the way where like he knew that they were in a terrible world, but was still willing to be the father that she needed to have. But anyways, like, okay, so what my point is that I think like the backlash again, they were reading all this fucking spoiler shit and they were like fucking themselves over by saying that they
Yeah.
didn't want to go fucking play the game just because of that, but they're reading it. They're not experiencing it. That's where the medium says so much more than just saying you're reading a book or you're fucking watching a movie. Like you're literally playing these characters, and then this is where like I think this game elevated story for games in a way where they inadvertently, purposefully, like force the player to hate it. They hate the situation, right? And it's almost like the same situation of like, oh, you know, somebody called somebody out on a joke, right? And it's like, yeah, you get it, right? That was the joke. That was a satirical joke. You know, like when you get those kinds of satire jokes that people are just like, they frame it in a way where it's like, that's contradictory. And they're like, yeah, I know. I said that because that was the joke. So this is like the same way where it's like, I'm angry. I hate this. I hate that Joel's dead. It's like, yes, we did it this way. And we made it so cringy and so realistic because you have to hate it. Like you need to hate the situation, or else you're not invested with the characters. So
I mean, who knew that The Last of Us was not going to be, you know, fan servicey?
Right? Yeah.
Give the players what they wanted.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they weren't going to have a happy ending.
Right. Exactly. And then a lot of people are, you know, there's a lot of people. I mean, I wouldn't say a lot. There's like a good divide between, say, people that played that went through the whole game and they still stick on into this kind of like fact of like Joel died. He was just a device. And then at the end, they're like, what was the whole point of this? Like, she didn't actually get her revenge. But that was the point. That was the point.
That's the thing, exactly. Like, I mean, in that final moment, or not the final moment, but the final fight when Ellie is about, like, I already talked, I sort of like mentioned how like the game broke me at certain parts where I was just like, oh man, like I was tearing up and I was getting really sad. And one of those, one of the last moments where that happened was when Ellie was about to kill Abby. Like, where I was like, because I felt for then that's a twofold thing. Because one, like you were saying, Sean, I didn't want either one of them to die, and I had been on the journey with both of them. I'm like, oh God, please don't kill her. But at the same time, it broke me because I was looking at Ellie's face and I was seeing her and you see like Abby clawing at her arm and then she stops as she's dying, and I'm like, oh God, like Ellie, like don't do this, like please don't kill her, because if you kill her, this will destroy you completely.
Yeah.
Like, even if you think it won't, it will completely destroy you.
Yeah.
And like and so when she got that flash in her head where she sees Joel for a second and she snaps out of it and she tells like Abby to just go with Lev, that was a relief for me. Yeah. Like, that was like, I was like, oh, that's the resolve I wanted, to be perfectly honest, because it was like, that this whole thing, we see how revenge erodes and how it destroys people, and like I didn't want Ellie to be like Ellie had exactly. Ellie and Abby had been through so much pain because of their want for revenge, and I didn't want Ellie to be destroyed. Like, so so when she stopped and she realized it was enough, that was what I wanted, and I feel like that was the payoff from Joel being murdered in the first place.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree. Yeah.
You know, I really like the fact that you brought that up with Tommy and Sean, because that was the moment where like you realize that everything is so well set up. Like, you know, they set up how much Tommy lost through trying to get revenge. He lost his relationship with his wife, and you see that, you know, Ellie's walking the exact same path.
He is.
Son of a bitch.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, that was a great fucking scene, by the way. I
thought for sure when she shot him, he was dead. Like, but instead it was like it was a Big Boss situation where she like shot him through the head and it went through his eye, and like it just like he was still alive. That was it's true. Yeah, with Tommy, that's very interesting too, because his whole dynamic with Joel, even going back to the first one, like he had a lot of resentment and spite towards Joel. Yeah, because like in those 20 years between the beginning of the first game and then like the 20 years when you start off as Joel in the apocalypse, like you see later on in the first game when he meets up with Tommy, how Tommy's like Joel's like, if I hadn't have fucking done what I did, we would have fucking died.
Right,
I did what I did, so we could have survived. Right. And Tommy was like, it wasn't worth it. Yeah. Like, it was like, all the shit I've done, all the shit I carry, it was not fucking worth it. Yeah. So like the conflict that they had, like, but in the end, like they're still brothers, right? And to see, even though Tommy didn't even really like Joel, to see the fact that like Ellie was super close with Joel. She was the only person that she had. Tommy he sort of becoming closer with Joel over the years between the first one and the second one, and then seeing how Ellie was trying to let it go. Right, like after her final fight with Abby in Seattle, not the final fight in the game, but where Abby's like about to kill Dina, and like Ellie's like no, and then Abby like lets her go basically, like, and they're on the farm and they're like they have a baby and they have a wife, and then Tommy comes back and he's like he can't let it go because he's like you made a promise to me, like when in Seattle you said when we got back to Jackson that like you would make her pay, and he just can't let it go, and like it's so interesting to see that because it's almost a subversion and a flip of what you think might happen, right? Where it's just like Tommy didn't even like Joel. It was his brother, but he didn't like him, and like he went through all that. He got shot. He all this stuff, and then you almost feel like in almost any other story, it would go, okay, Ellie has a life now, but she can't let it go, and she's trying to convince Tommy to keep going, but he's like, Ellie, just let it go. Just like that's how it would normally be in like most other stories, but it was totally flipped, where it was just like Ellie's having these traumatic, she's totally traumatized, but she's trying, but then the fact that Tommy brings it up and almost makes her feel more guilty, and it almost is like pushes her to that final, okay, I guess I have to finish it. Like, I guess I have to leave my life, and I can't let it go. I like, even though I want to, like, he almost guilt trips her back into it, Yeah. And it's really sad.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting in that the fact that he was before Joel died, he was less of, he wasn't even at the same level as what Joel would do, but then after Joel died, it's almost like that he got consumed by it himself, and it's showing physically, and it's showing mentally, and the difference between I mean the biggest probably difference between him and Ellie is that Ellie is just on the precipice of breaking past, taking that step where he already had went,
Right.
And like it's like he's an example of what she could have been, if she kept on going. It's really sad. But yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to the story was definitely about like second chances, redemption. It was more than it was started as a revenge story, but it started more so saying the end doesn't justify the means of the revenge. It's just going to further break you apart, the same as the world will just churn you out in this world.
Yeah, and how it's just an endless cycle. Yeah. And if you don't break it the way that Ellie breaks it at the end by not killing Abby, it's just going to consume you, consume everybody around you, which it almost does. And like it's never going to end unless you end it.
And she was perfectly like, she was about to and she was threatening to kill a person she's never met.
Right, the same way, by the way, that Abby was threatening to kill Dina.
Yeah, so it's like, like, it just goes to show that, that's the story that they were going with, and I think it was solid, and then people's, like, assumption of it was, baseless on terms of, like, they didn't go through the experience, and even if they did go through the experience, they constantly are just getting the wrong message because they can't get past themselves. They're just not past the part of, like, Joel died, or like, what is the story? Like, why didn't you kill her? Like, that wasn't what we're going for, or that what they were going for. That wasn't the story about.
Which was ironically, as we're saying, the point of the story.
Yeah.
Right? Like, to get past yourself, to be able to move on.
Right.
Right? Like, it's just like you're focused on the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Like, you have to take this journey
and
so you can move on.
It's also very understandable too on
sure,
like, that stance, and I think that just attests to like how aware a writer should be about, like, where death is applied, and that
Oh,
you
yeah.
know you can. It's like you can almost say that Tommy coming back was almost that was a fucking plot reason to extend the story. But that's not
Sure.
necessarily the case. Like we wanted a example of what she could have been if she kept on going.
Right.
Right.
So I mean, yeah, other people have different opinions, but it's totally fine. But yeah, Last of Us Part Two, that was really enjoyable. I think
Yeah.
this is the best way to end it. Like, I don't know if anybody else has any further things to say about.
A couple of things.
Okay, go for it.
Just reiterating on the themes of the game, of the both the redemptive power of being able to see your enemy as another human being, of like not just dehumanizing them uh with the all-consuming hatred. I think
Yeah.
that it's a very relevant theme, especially for our society nowadays, where we tend to
For sure.
demonize the other, and people nowadays just literally want to destroy each other. They just want to destroy each other more than they want to build themselves, to the point where a lot of people are not are willing to to destroy themselves in order to hurt the other. Like,
Yeah.
that kind of hatred is so consuming, you can destroy yourself in trying to destroy the other. And
Yeah.
how much forgiveness and empathy can save you.
Right.
Yeah.
Um.
Also,
Okay.
how fucking awesome is it that they programmed a whole fucking guitar in the game?
Yeah, that was cool. That was cool.
I spent so long just playing around with the guitar.
Can't she just
Yeah.
go left-handed with the freaking guitar? I mean, can't she
I
just
mean,
learn how to play it on the other way? Okay. Well, anyways.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we'll end off the podcast here, and then we'll continue. I don't know, our stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Bye
All
bye.
right.
Well,
Bye,
Yep. So
everybody.
here we are signing off. Until next time.
Goob o'clock.